Welcome back to the Infinite Monkey Cage. I'm Brian Cox.
And I'm Robin Ince, and we're back for 4 more programmes, and this time for the whole series we will have an audience. In fact, we have an audience before us who will make a small noise just to show that they are here.
Since we were last on air, I've written a paper on extracting the Higgs boson couplings at LHC using a central jet veto and broken the sound barrier in an inverted dive from 40,000 feet in a Hawker Hunter.
And I've played to a very disappointingly small audience at the Elgiva Theatre in Chesham, and I had food poisoning for 6 hours on a train from Newton Abbot to Ilkley. Yes, your glamorous life, but have you had a contaminated fish stick? Have you been sick anywhere recently?
Yeah, whilst filming in the high Bolivian Andes.
OK, there we are. But why do we care about illness? What a small thing the illness of the body is, because today we ask, is the apocalypse upon us and can science save us? Whether we like it or not, the end of the world is nigh. But when is nigh? As Carl Sagan almost said, in 5 billion years the sun will swell to a red giant engulfing Mercury and Venus and eventually gobbling up the Earth. And look who's this coming down the street. It's my old friend Richard Feynman. He was ridiculous. So,
well, this show was originally going to be called Can the Human Race Survive the End of the Solar System, and will we ever get that far? But I know the answer to half of it, as usual, so I'm going to rephrase that. Yes, the human race could survive into the indefinite future if it would only embrace science and reason rather than New Age drivel and superstition. But given that it probably won't, then how far can it reasonably be expected to get?
Ah, you say you understand most things. Dark energy, no evidence, load of old rubbish. So we have a panel of experts to help us out today and hopefully avoid the apocalypse. In the Hollywood movie version of the approaching apocalypse, he'll be played by Jeff Goldblum, who will insist on adding a monocle to make the character more believable. Science writer and broadcaster Adam Rutherford.
And in the British film version of Armageddon, she'll be played by Helena Bonham Carter in 18th Century Lace. It's solar scientist Dr. Lucy Green.
And in the French film version of The End Times, in a stunning bit of miscasting because he insisted on it, he'll be played by Catherine Deneuve. It's writer, performer and occasional polymath Andy Hamilton. Andy, firstly, whatever happened, and did they ever exist, to the man with the end is nigh signs?
Oh, yeah. I think I've got a vague memory of an end is nigh man who used to walk around the West End when I was younger. I don't know where he is. Well, he'd be dead, probably. He's got told you on the back. But, I mean, yeah, I don't know, because they're in cartoons.
Yeah, end is nice sound, and I was at the Cartoon Museum the other day, and also flashers in coats like that. I don't know, were they real? They were, good. Thank you very much. What a nostalgic memory, where have they all gone?
Adam, I want to come to you for a considered scientific opinion. Let's go straight to the heart of the matter. 2012, it's in the news, it's all over the web. What's your opinion on 2012?
You're referring to the Mayan prophecy that in 2012 the world will cease to exist. So it's derived from this calendar and the 144,000-day cycles that the Mayan calendar was based on. 2012, 21st of December 2012, to be specific, is the end of the cycles. But there is no prediction in Mayan history, of which we know very little, that anything is going to happen at the end of it. It's like nothing happens on June the 23rd. But some conspiracy theorists believe that something tragic like the magnetic poles of the Earth will reverse, which does happen and has happened many times in the history of the Earth, but it tends to happen over about sort of 10,000 years.
Would it matter? Would it matter if the poles reverse?
It wouldn't matter at all.
How would it affect me, which is later?
I know this is the BBC, but it's not one of those, how have you been affected by the apocalypse? there will be a hotline.
Yeah, at the end of the programme. So how would it manifest itself?
It won't at all. And so we know that the pole is moving anyway, currently at a rate of about 20 kilometres a year. The poles do actually move continuously through the Earth's cycle because there's a lot of iron in the centre of the Earth, and that is moving.
See, I'm very impressed by the speed in which you've actually gone from 2012 to real science. Which was... Because I was going to say, Andy, I get a sense with the 2012 thing that perhaps book sales are more important than rationalism or facts.
Yeah. They are cutting the Olympic funding bit by bit, aren't they? I think they're secretly thinking that's a waste of money.
Apocalyptics 2012.
Now, you have actually been to a Mayan temple, haven't you?
Yeah.
And something excellent happened there. Well, excellent in my mind, if you could draw the picture.
Robin's referring to the time that I climbed up the Mayan temple at Chichen Itza, which is an easy thing to do. It's a stepped pyramid. Did you manage to get down?
No, I developed a fear of heights.
I did.
That is spooky ever since. That was where I started being conscious about heights.
It's astonishingly steep.
I know.
Isn't it? But
My wife led me down, sort of like some blind cripple.
I came down on my bottom.
Yeah.
I shuffled down, like a little kid who can't walk down the stairs. But I mean, the thing is,
Can we just, let's not move on too quickly from that. Let's all think of sexy Brian Cox. And everyone go, oh, look, there's Brian Cox. Oh, going down a temple on his bottom. I don't know if this is some kind of atheist agenda, whether actually...
Good comment on the 2012 myth. But I mean, the real question... So the Maya were actually interesting, weren't they? I mean, they were excellent astronomers. I'm going to ask Lucy if there is anything interesting, astronomically speaking, in 2012.
Well, there could be.
See?
And this is something that the media has really picked up on, is when the sun will be at its next peak of activity. So the sun has this cycle where the sunspot number rises and falls, these dark spots on the surface, but also things like explosions and eruptions that happen in the sun's atmosphere follow this cycle too. And so we're currently using our models to predict when the next peak of activity will happen. And the first calculation showed us that it will indeed be around 2012. So that really got jumped on. And so the thing that I keep reading in the paper is that the sun will unleash the big one in 2012 and it will wipe us out. But just like the Mayan calendar and the end of days has been shifted forward 60 days, so we refined our models of the sun, and now we think solar maximum will happen around 2013, so 2014.
The big one is going to be unleashed in 2013 instead and wipe us all out.
Yes.
But what are the consequences? I mean, what do you mean?
So the sun has different kinds of activity, and the one that is most important happens to be the one that I study, actually, and it's called a coronal mass ejection, and these are huge eruptions of magnetic field from the sun's atmosphere. Carries with it mass, plasma, which has about the same mass as Mount Everest, so huge things that expand very rapidly. And when they hit the Earth, the magnetic field of this structure from the sun interacts with the magnetic field of the Earth, and it causes a huge range of effects. Driving the northern lights is the most beautiful manifestation, but it could also be that your satellite navigation becomes blind, other satellites themselves are affected. So actually I was looking back to see some of the effects that the sun has had on us over the years, and I started to feel a bit sorry for Canada, because in 1989... I was just drawn to this. In 1989, we had one of these coronal mass ejections that hit the Earth, interacted with our magnetic field, and induced huge currents in the Earth's system. So they flow through the atmosphere, making the northern lights, and then they flow through the rocks, or they flow through our electricity networks, which is the path of least resistance for them. And in 1989, part of the Canadian national grid was wiped out. 6 million people lost their electricity, and it cost them over £1 billion to get the system back up again. And then I was reading in 1994, 2 Canadian telecommunications satellites were taken out by an event from the sun. And one took 6 months to recover at a cost of £40 million. And these are just 2 of hundreds and hundreds of events that happen on the Earth, driven by the sun.
And see, that's all very good looking at the big picture, but I still want to know, how's that going to affect Andy?
Well, presumably, if we had one now, I mean, we're much more reliant now, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, would it cook sort of all the computer networks and...
Well, it could take out infrastructure that we rely on. So the electricity, our weather forecasts, if you believe the weather forecasts, they all rely on satellites. So that data would be affected. Satellite navigation in your cars, actually, this is the one that people keep talking about.
Well, that woman get less cocky then.
That was all predicted by the Maya, was it?
It's not exactly the end of days, though, is it? Getting lost with your sat nav.
It could be if you drive into a river.
Yeah, but hang on, you're not actually saying that you've gone insane. I mean, you're saying that what one hopes, and I have to admit I am losing less confidence in humanity, is people will go, I might stop listening to that thing. It seems to be leading me to a river. As opposed to, this is technology, it's the only thing I can trust. Well, you can hope, but I tell you what, I reckon it's a 50-50. But we're talking about the sun, though. I mean, we talk about these kind of things, but actually the sun itself ultimately isn't... the destiny, as we mentioned at the beginning, is in approximately 5 billion years' time... It's the end for the Earth anyway, isn't it? The end pretty much for our solar system.
Yeah, that's right. So the sun only has a finite lifetime because it's fusing hydrogen into helium in its core, and that's what it's providing its power. So once that hydrogen is gone, the sun will go out. So, the sun will die, just like all the other stars in the universe.
Andy, why do you think...
So I'm just feeling really sad. It's not just the sun, it's all the stars in the universe. It just seems...
Eventually.
You're thinking about property price, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Why do you think, Andy, people are so morbidly fascinated by the apocalypse?
Well, I mean, every culture seems to have an apocalyptic myth, doesn't it? And what's odd about them as well, I was thinking about this the other day, is that they all have this... I mean, a lot of it's obviously based in religion, but they all have this slightly kinky element, in a way, which is that apocalypses are sort of like a form of punishment, really, almost like the universe is, visiting correction on us and sort of doesn't really approve of us being here.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, Adam, that there does seem to be an anti-science element to these
Well, it's not rational,
theories?
if that's what you're asking. and the reason we can tell it's not rational is because every single apocalyptic theory in history up to date has not happened yet. And at some point, it's like ghost hunters. At some point, they surely should turn around and say, do you know what, I think we've got enough data. So I counted that there were more than 60 in 2006 alone. How about that?
Well, you mean not to humans. I mean, there are mass extinctions all the time.
That's absolutely right. And in fact, mass extinction is the planetary norm, and that's something that is not really well understood in popular culture. There has been extinctions throughout the history of life on Earth, and in fact, and I love this stat, 97% of species that have ever existed currently don't.
Why do you love it?
Well, it's just because it shows how tiny we are in the grand scheme of things. Everything that has ever existed, which is all intricately linked together through Darwinian evolution, almost all of it doesn't exist anymore. And
I'm excited, though. You said currently don't. Does that mean, much like the pulp comeback I've been hearing about, are we going to have a Brachiosaurus? Good to have you back. Yeah, I haven't got all the guys. This isn't the original Diplodocus. I apologise.
I think that's perfectly plausible in the long term. I'm just looking forward for the day they get dodos back. I just want to know what they taste like. Dodo pasta.
They're going to be so angry if they come back, aren't they? Imagine, they're going to be cross, dodos.
And still looking at themselves and going, I'm cross and ridiculous. The worst mixture of things to be. Well, I'm fascinated because something that, for my generation anyway, dinosaurs, they didn't actually know how they... until I think, probably, was it the early 1980s that they came up with, as far as I know, still the best current theory is that an asteroid hit the Earth. Is that right, that would still be...
In fact, it was only this year that was confirmed as being the consensus view. But even so, we think about a great big apocalyptic event like a meteorite, which was probably 20 kilometres wide and leaves a 110-kilometre diameter crater in the Earth. We think of that as being an immediate and terrifying event, which it is. But in fact, the extinction that it caused lasted up to 40,000 years. Right, so even this apocalypse and the geological timescale is still relatively slow, 4 times longer than human history. They found dinosaurs that were 40,000 years after the point where this meteorite landed.
Now, something I know our producer wanted to know is, if the dinosaurs died out, why are there alligators? And that's what she said, and I want to know as well.
It's a perfectly reasonable question, and the answer is, we don't know.
Oh, dark energy, alligators. Is there anything you people know?
So there are lots of quirks. It's uneven because we know that almost all of the large marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs got wiped out, but sharks didn't. They're the same size and probably had a similar level in the food chain. All of the dinosaurs got wiped out, but similar-sized reptiles like the crocodilians, like alligators, didn't get wiped out. So there's all sorts of things that we can't work out about what happened 65 million years ago, and alligators is one of them.
Well, Lucy, there's a tendency to think of asteroid impact as either Hollywood or something that happened in the past, isn't there? But I suppose in the list of things that could cause a mass extinction and remove humans from the Earth, asteroids would be, what, top?
I think it would be. It's top, and I think it's my favourite way to go as well. Because you can choose how you want to die with an asteroid impact. I mean, it is going to happen. Every day we're hit by 100 tonnes of space debris. Mostly it's in the form of dust. But we will be hit by something big in the future. There are big objects out there. And, if you're really unlucky, it would land straight on your head and squash you. If you're, maybe next in line, if you're near the site, you might be burnt as this huge amount of energy is given up and causes fires.